Hello once again to the comics drawing board or drawing table, whatever you prefer. Today I have a very special title. Like all the titles that I bring here for a review and analysis, they are all special, but the book right in front of me at the moment, Valerian and the Ambassador of the Shadows, does hold a special place in my collection. It is a crucial title in my upbringing, enjoying comics, and learning about comics and eventually studying comics to be able to write them and work in them. Now, this is not the original edition, but it is the French edition. Most of you might remember that Luc Besson, the French director, has recently done an adaptation of Valerian, which was met with a 50-50 degree of both critical success and commercial success. I myself personally enjoyed the movie very much. The previous sci-fi set in space from Luc Besson, called The Fifth Element, was precisely a secondary option that he had, because at the time he was not able to adapt Valerian because of budget limitations. And apart from actually the central casting of the two main characters, I believe the Valerian movie was quite well done, and it does takes a lot of ideas straight out of this book. I mean, the main plot, the main setting, and most of the scenes as well. So obviously this will not be a review about the Luc Besson movie, and that is not the idea of this video, to be comparing the book with the film, but obviously there will be a few references here and there that will, kind of partially correlate with the film itself. Well, first a little bit of backstory to Valerian. The series has always been worked by these two gentlemen. You have Pierre Christine doing the script. He is a French literature academic that has worked in journalism and script writing for films as well. And he joined forces with his longtime friend Jean-Claude Mézières, also a art school academic. And both of them start releasing the first album, the first graphic novel, Valerian, back in the 60s in a magazine called Le Pilote. It's a magazine like many of the French magazines, where you have a monthly or bi-monthly edition, and they basically are comprised of graphic novels broken down into little sections. So each magazine, you basically are reading 5 or 6 graphic novels portions, and then after a few months or a year, you have basically read 5 or 6 graphic novels, but spread out through those magazines. But eventually, obviously, those things are compiled into the actual trade paperbacks. Ambassador of the Shadows is definitely the high point of the Valerian series, the high point of their career, and obviously it has served as a template for the movie. Now let's just take out this dust jacket here, and the whole series of Valerian has been very influential and inspirational for a lot of the sci-fi works that have been done in the 70s and early 80s. A lot of it has served as inspiration for Star Wars, Blade Runner, and even before that, a lot of the aesthetics of Valerian kind of trickle down to other French works, especially the ones in Metal Hurlant, which eventually was kind of bought out or adapted to the American market as the Heavy Metal magazine. But let's delve into this book and try to appreciate exactly why it is such a great work. And again, you will find other videos on YouTube going into this series and probably even into this book. But I'm really going to delve here into the minute details and why it is great to understand that a work like this works up to the point that this one does. And as we start to explore Valerian and Ambassador of the Shadows, it's worth giving a praise to the third element of this creative team, which is the colorist, Evelyn Tranlay. Their earthly tones, their expansive palette, in the days way before digital coloring, really makes this book into something special. As the story begins, Christine and Mézières start a prose that, just like many cryptic sci-fi movies and stories from the 70s and the 60s, doesn't actually necessarily matches the visuals on display. What they do is something very interesting. They furnish the pages and the panels with little plot points and plot devices that later on will be very important for the story, just like this little precious rock here that kind of resembles the little precious stones, the little creature further on in the plot will ingest or replicate to be used as currency. This natural rock formation here, looking very much, suspiciously much like another alien species that later on will be in the book. And finally, this spaceship here, this sail barge, which again will be crucial in the third act. And as we indulge ourselves in pages 2 and 3, we can check all the interesting design choices that Mézières has done. Here the sail barge apparently gets destroyed, and that is an important plot point for later on. Here with these elongated shapes resembling a UFO, we're clearly reminded ourselves that we're dealing with alien civilizations. But the interesting thing is the diamond shape returns to ornament windows. Together with this mesh-like, wood-like structure, this whole craft kind of resembles the back of a Spanish Armada war galleon back from the 1700s. And as this ship meets another alien civilization, as the text illustrates, we have another cultural reference, but this time pop culture. Star Trek and been and gone by the time this book was released, but this seriously resembles the Star Trek Enterprise, and the destruction here might be that or might not be. And we go from a pop culture reference to a scientific one. Not sure if by the time this book came out, if the blueprints for the future International Space Station were already on the table, but somehow these pods here that form the central core of Point Central, which is the main setting of this book and also the main character effectively. These ones resemble very much the future sections of the ISS. And from horizontal panels to vertical ones, as the bits and pieces of the Point Central, the space station, is being described to us. A multitude of designs that Mézières applies, starting for example with this orb, with these spiky minarets, connected to the rest of the station by a minimalistic clean lines arm. Picking up from this, almost like a zoom out, although that's not necessarily the same arm. And again, with the colors of Etienne helping out, although there's a balance here between a surface that could be more influenced by light against one that could be influenced more by dark. We basically have straight lines there and straight lines here, but slightly more rounder. So again, it could be two different civilizations right here that are kind of connecting with these little arms right in the middle. The spaceship that somehow also arcs back to the design of 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, and also Alex Raymond's designs for the spaceships in Flash Gordon. The third panel here is actually one of my favorites in the whole book, where it's described that some of the civilizations ended up becoming an integral part of the space station, brought with them entire chunks of their homeworlds. It's a magnificent mountain here being held by these other arms, and at the same time it describes the amount of energy and power that the station needs to have at its core to have all these buildings connected and whole held in place. And here right at the bottom panel we start to get a lot of deep sea motifs, and this little detail here of the flora, which coming straight from this panel obviously is another idea being set across that the civilizations they brought with them chunks of flora and fauna from their home planets. The spaceships here looking like little fish or little aquatic beings. So in just one page here, we'll basically have the top of the station and the bottom of it. Wonderful way to design and present something to the reader in just one page. And here we get to the money shot of the book, a full bleed page, well, full bleed in the European graphic novel conventional sense, since it's actually framed by gutters. But here we finally get to assemble all the little parts of the station that Mézières has been showing us panel by panel. And again, the French kind of proving that you don't need to get to the end of a story to have a full disclosure picture like this. A great poster on his own. Continue to explore the different environments and the aliens of the space station that later on will obviously here and there make their more fleshed out appearances, and then finally the heroes appear in this very slim panel, almost like breaking the fourth wall, almost like breaking the page. Valerian and Laureline, the heroes of this series, are what the creators call space temporal agents. So that means that their adventures not only can be set in different points in space, they can only be set in different points in time. Valerian, the main hero, is clearly designed out of Alain Delon. Even though there might be contrary opinions of the opposite, I'm pretty sure he is. Alain Delon, a French actor, very popular in the late 60s and mainly throughout the 70s. Oh, a nice little shot here based on 2001 Space Odyssey, where they have to traverse this little corridor where gravity is slightly shifting. Again, another pop culture reference as well on the decors. Laureline, though, an interesting character. I always taken her as a young woman, a very young woman, which obviously is very feisty and very determined. I think the casting of the movie was so-so. The female actress they've chosen, Cara Delevingne, I think she's okay to portray her, although it does not exactly look like her, but I'm sure they could have done with a older, more savant kind of leading man, because Valerian is exactly that, a leading man. He's a ladies' man. But he's a guy that he's a tough guy. He's a French cowboy, so to speak, always in control of the situation. This actually is the titular character of this book, the ambassador, the proper ambassador of the shadows. And another great character is introduced, this little angry animal, very squishy, that replicates any sort of piece of something that you have him ingest. He reproduces it by basically digesting it and then pooing it out. It's in pages like this that both the artist and the colorist shine. With the arrival of Valerian's ship onto a base somewhere in Point Central, no dialogue, and the whole story being perfectly told in 5 panels. The next page, the same motif continues, now into the interior. Great detailed backgrounds, no need for words, no need for sound effects, everything is self-explanatory. And as the speech of the ambassador is starting, the action starts. And the great thing you should bear in mind is that we got all these straight, clear cuts, almost l'Enclair sort of lines, and then suddenly the burst of color that goes against everything else that Etienne the colorist has been using as a palette in this page is completely broken down, and organic shapes of both the melting of the wall, but also revealing what is other civilizations, other spaces belonging to other civilizations, start protruding through the panel. And also the continuity being great as the ambassador takes off his helmet. Lorelei and Valerian still have theirs. Although on the next page, probably the first of the two best pages in the whole book, Lorelei has taken out her helmet and Valerian is telling her, alerting her that she should put it back on. As the aliens burst forward, using these weapons, they kind of spray a jelly-like mold over everyone, so they don't actually kill them, they immobilize them. And as we have the opposite ray coming from there, the heroes are running to the left, and then as both Valerian and Lorelei try to duck the jelly-like thing, we go to another panel revealing the outcome, picking up what they want, Valerian becoming aware of what's happening, and them leaving. Now, this page here, the payoff of this page is actually this one here, where then we have Valerian getting up, getting out, going after the aliens. They're right there on the platform, jumping up using his little jet propulsion system there, hanging onto the door, and as the aliens go into space, they grab him. And we have Valerian and the ambassador going off, disappearing. Basically, we have the two main characters after just a few pages being gone, and now the plot will survive around Lorelei. And without wanting to drag this into a long talk on the how to the comics, it'll be a little bit boring and slightly redundant. The great thing about works like this is that it shows us how to construct drama in this sort of narrative, in a comic book, in a graphic novel. So from page to page, the attention that is given to each panel on how many details should comprise the background, and what sort of elements should be both in the foreground and in the middle ground, and how they should dynamically be presented. This character here, which is basically comic relief, but is an aide to the ambassador, which turns into a helper to Lorelei during her adventure. In this particular scene, while he goes and checks the door, she goes to a control panel for him just to come back later saying the door has been booby-trapped. And just like in a good edited movie, the scene here plays out perfectly well over a couple of panels. Perfect timing, perfect length. While most of the novels in the Valerian series are self-contained, the supporting cast, though, does cross over from episode to episode, with the winged but non-flying alien species whose snouts make them resemble anteaters and are only interested in monetary gains being fan favorites. And check out this panel right here, with the glow of the pearls being replicated, obfuscating the body of Lorelei, making her look almost like a maiden in a dress instead of her skin-tight military outfit. And with the help of the colors, and just a few short lines, Mézières is able to show the eagerness of the little aliens in acquiring their money. Well, this is not just a statement on the quality of the artist, but it is also about the language on display right here. The colors, the lighting, the choice of a perspective. Everything has to gel in order to convey a thoroughly enjoyable experience. And while I've offered plenty of compliments on the art, it is also good to express our gratitude on the script by Pierre Christine. What he's basically trying to do here, and thoroughly accomplishes in The Ambassador of the Shadows, is really uses a series of characters, secondary characters, as figureheads to represent different facets of our society. It's usually criticism aimed at state organizations and over-the-top complexes that a lot of us in modern Western liberal societies has. For example, this guy, besides being an annoying character, is really an over-the-top bureaucrat. This centaur species here, he really is the physical embodiment of mashism. and chauvinism. In this scene here, where Lorelai is introduced to them, they basically offer a seat of honor on top of this stand, and she thinks she's going to be treated to a hell of a show, and is delighted in that when finally she finds out she's just a softball for their vicious tribal-like game. Unfortunately, she has to go through this ordeal to be able to obtain some information. Some of the greatest novels in literary history are usually the ones that deal with a hero or heroes in search of something or someone. uh, Treasure of Sierra Madre, Lord of the Rings, and here in Valerian, where Lorelai is basically in search of Valerian himself, as I mentioned, he's actually missing for most of the novel. She goes from section to section, from city to city in this Point Central station, and gets to know all these characters, these alien species. One by one, she's given information in exchange of prizes, and each species she visits and each situation she's in, she gets to learn a little bit more of the conspiracy behind of what is actually happening. The social, political, and economic commentary continues throughout the story with every single species she gets to know, and every single set of characters she gets embedded with. With this being mostly Lorelai's story, it's also a great character-centered narrative, with her obviously evolving throughout the graphic novel, and all her decisions being of utmost importance. Everything that she does in this book has obviously to contribute to the resolution, and her strength, her moral, and her character abilities really are a great way to segue the story itself. The devil really is in the details in most great comic books. In Ambassador of the Shadows, they even go to the point of changing the speech balloons outlines depending on the alien species that he's talking. As for example, this jelly-like, translucent species with little kind of bubble-like speech balloons. There's also a character arc to this little animal, which helps make the plot more tense, as Lorelai relies on currency to be able to progress throughout the narrative and being able to have access from species to species. She obviously requires this animal to be able to reproduce whatever monetary duplicates she needs in order to be able to obtain information and use it as a free pass to go from one place to another. Now, the animal eventually gets tired and exhausted, so his resilience, or in other words, the plot is depending on his resilience to be able to provide Lorelai for a way to carry on throughout the story. So there is drama and stress emphasized on his character. Once again, the lines of Mézières save the day, in which he uses this a very organic flow with his brush to depict every single species in a completely different way. The Bagulus are these guys, which are the ones that actually have kidnapped the ambassador, and well, and by proxy, Valerian himself. Lorelai has to masquerade herself as a Bagula female, as it is in the movie, very well depicted. And again, the lines of Mézières, now that this shaman of the tribe, this holy man, starts showing a cryptic, dreamlike image throughout this diamond, and there we go, there's a diamond shape coming back and being important for the plot. And here in this dreamlike exposition, we basically find out what happened to Valerian and the ambassador after they were taken by the ship into space. Obviously, everything is still set in the Point Central station, but here we realize that not only there's different sections, but also there's completely different environments. And to note as well the nice little humor bits. For example, when Lorleen is covered by the shapeshifter to make her look like a Bagulu, she inadvertently speaks out in her own voice, but the alien that is covering her speaks as well. And obviously, his speech balloon is outlined in a different way. This alien notices it, and then here, as they start partying heavy, she argues that she wants to get out of there. Very good.